I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on the Spotlight Network, we're diving into the timeless wisdom of Greek proverbs with two incredible writers. We're talking with John Peters and Pamela Dovellos. Their book is called Greek Proverbs and Sayings. It captures centuries of Greek culture, tradition, and insight, offering 212 thought-provoking proverbs in both Greek and English. If you're passionate about heritage, language, or simply love a good piece of wisdom to live by, you won't want to miss this book or this conversation. We're delighted to have these very talented authors join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put them in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like them by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing their amazing book. The links are below the interview. Pam and John, thanks so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a great work. Whose idea was it? How did you guys wind up collaborating? Tell us a little bit about the process of compiling these 212 bits of wisdom.
Well, so Pam and I met, I guess, around 15 years ago. We share similar backgrounds. We're both proud Greek Americans, and we just started talking, and we became friends, and our spouses became friends, and our kids became friends. And one thing that Pam and I shared very often was that we would come out with these Greek proverbs and sayings. And she would throw some at me, I would throw some at her. I've been writing them down for decades, and I have them on a book outside of our kids' rooms, and they just come and they look at them all the time. And when she threw out a few more at me one day, I said, "This would make a great book."
Yeah.
And here we are.
Great. Pam, let me ask you, what's one of your favorite sayings from Greek Proverbs?
One of my favorites is one that actually my grandmother used to say a lot when she was around. In Greek, it's "O chronos είναι ο καλύτερος σύμβουλος." And that is just basically saying that patience often leads us to the best decision and the best outcome. So if you're just patient, with time, everything turns out just the way it's supposed to be.
That's great. I think that's a wise piece of advice. John, let me ask you, what's your favorite proverb? Is there one that sticks with you?
I don't know. How about if I tell you the one I told my kids this morning? It's you. One of my kids has a friend I'm just not too crazy about, and it's Greeks grow up with life lessons all the time. So I looked at her and she said, "Well, I'm going out with so and so," and I'm like, "Well, don't forget you learn to limp when you live with cripples." And in typical response, she looks at me and as any Greek American kid would do, and say, "What the heck does that mean? What are you trying to tell me?" I'm like, "Well, listen, you hang out, you are your friends." And those are the kinds of things that happen, which is why it's important to have really good friends in life. And I'm blessed to have Pamela as a great friend too.
Absolutely. My mother used to always say, choose your friends with care, you become what they are.
Right. Same thing.
Which is basically the same thing. The Irish wisdom, the Italian wisdom, the Greek wisdom, they're all kind of similar in a way. But certainly the Greeks have fine-tuned it to a science with not only their proverbs, but also their philosophy as well. John, were you able to get your daughter to learn to speak Greek?
Well, listen, if anywhere you go around the world and you find a Greek diaspora, the first generation kids all have the same experience. So it doesn't matter if you're in Brazil or in Denmark or in the US or Australia, we all have the same experience. So the first thing is that Greek is spoken in the house. You're all Greek Orthodox. You all go to church, and a whole bunch of other things. You're very regularly told why Greeks are so important at the best of everything. And the movie Big Fat Greek Wedding was spot on. The other thing is you go to Greek school. You learn to read and write, and you go to Greek school. And we all hate it, but fast forward however many decades, it's an incredibly important part of our culture.
Yeah.
So yes, the kids speak Greek.
Okay, awesome, great. That was the question. Didn't let you evade it there, but that's great. How about you, Pam? Did you do the whole thing? I heard that going to Greek Orthodox Church. Now, I'm friends with a patron saint of the Greek, a gentleman by the name of Ernie Anastas, who was an anchorman in New York City, very big into the Greek culture. But I hear from people like him that it can be a very long day at church when you're at a Greek Orthodox service, right?
Yes, you pretty much block out your whole Sunday. I mean, it's an event, and it's good. You get to spend time with your family, you have fellowship, And the kids get used to it, and then they know that every Sunday it's a day of family and a day of church, and that's it. There's no
No ifs,
discussion.
ands, or buts about it.
No,
You're
there
going
is
to
none.
church and you're
None of
going to
that.
be with
Nope.
everybody. I think that's great. I think that type of discipline is actually missing in the young people today. Have you been able to get your children to toe the line, so to speak, and follow those commandments?
I will have to say it has been a little bit of a challenge only because exactly like you said, there's so many activities
Mhm.
nowadays for these kids, and they tend to take away from their weekend. And for us, the kids know that church and God is number one.
Mhm.
So, we may not be there every single Sunday. We miss a few here and there, but they know that it is a priority.
Yeah.
And so that is definitely instilled in them. And I hope that, when they're adults and they have their own children, that they'll continue, to
Yeah.
the tradition of and the importance of church.
Absolutely, absolutely. John, what was it like finally writing this book? You said you and Pamela had talked about it for quite a while.
Mhm.
Finally, you came down to writing it, um, narrowing it down to 212. Tell us a little bit about the process.
Yeah, I think we started around 400 or 500. And we wanted to be sure that we could find the some real information about who said what. I mean, most of the proverbs that you start writing down come from something else, and then you'll read something, and someone will say, "Oh no, that's from I don't know, Robert Redford or some other famous person," right? And it turns out all those famous people are quoting those proverbs and sayings. So we wanted to get it to a book that was about 200 plus. I think our initial goal was around 365, so we could say proverb of the day or something.
Hmm.
But we needed to do everything so that everything was in English, everything was in Greek, everything had an explanation in both, and it's just perfect for everybody, and it's right around the right size. So it was okay. It was fun. It was a fun process. A lot harder than we thought, frankly.
Yeah. Well, it was nice you had a collaborator. Pamela, are you guys thinking about putting together a sequel? I mean, it doesn't have to stay at 212. What do you think?
Sure, why not? Why not? We're game. We're game. We'll see what happens.
Exactly. What was the writing experience like for you?
Oh, it was great. I mean, John took the lead, and he was such a great teacher, and we just had so much fun doing it, and we laughed so hard. So it was just so enjoyable. It was great. We had a
Right.
great time.
Share with us another bit of Greek wisdom, if you will, another proverb that
Um,
you like.
oh, definitely. I think my number one is definitely the by Aristotle, a friend to all is a friend to none. I think that, it's hard to be everything to everybody. And, you may not be everybody's cup of tea,
Mhm.
but you need to be true to yourself. And then you will find your people and you will find who you are meant to be around. You could still be kind to everybody, but
Yeah.
you got to be who you are and be true to yourself.
Yeah. I guess if you're friends with everyone, that's an impossibility. So you're letting your own character, your own opinions, your own
Correct.
values take the wayside a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, cool. John, how about you?
How about yesterday's morning to my wife when my son was acting up a little bit? That one should work. So I just looked at her and I'm like, the wildest colts make the best horses.
Mhm.
And that was something by Plutarch. And it's just about, listen, it's independence time. He's a teenager, is growing up. It's independence time. They're developing their personalities and their spirits and things like that. And that's good. That's good at this age.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. The wildest colts
The best horses.
are the best horses. Okay, I'm going to have to borrow that, no doubt. That's a great one.
Listen,
Uh,
some of them are kind of dark. I mean,
oh,
I can
give
tell
me
you a
a
story.
dark one.
Okay,
I can
so
handle that.
so when I was I used to own a Greek tour company, and I was talking to my uncle one day, and I was talking about some competitor, and I'm
Mhm.
like, yeah, I don't want to talk to that guy. I just don't want to talk to him. And he looks at me and he pulls me aside and he goes, listen, embrace your enemy. It's easier to stick the knife in his back. So it was typical keep your friends close and your enemies closer type
Right,
thing.
right.
He wasn't literally suggesting I go out and start stabbing people in the back, but it's that it's a life lesson. And Greeks grow up, it's like many other cultures. We grow up with a life lesson at every turn. As a kid, you never got a straight answer from your parents. You got a proverb and told to go think about it and see how it works out.
Well, that's a good way to develop critical thinking in young people. I think that's a great way of parenting, actually, as opposed to giving the precise answer, give the child something to think about. I
Mhm.
think that's great. Pamela, what do you hope readers take away from this book?
Oh, I definitely hope that they laugh together.
Hmm.
I mean, it's just, and then they reminisce about their past and their parents and their grandparents or whoever was special to them and introduced them or, spoke about these little proverbs that are really just life lessons and little advice and that they remember and, that they pass on to their
Yeah.
kids.
And it must have been it's a nice connection to your folks, I'd imagine, too, and your grandparents, because all of this stuff basically came from them, right?
Absolutely. I mean, especially like when I think of my grandparents, I laugh and I remember so many of the things that they would say, and they stick with you. They stick
Oh,
with you. You
sure.
know, as a teenager, you might ignore them and or blow them off and act like you don't care what they say, but
Yeah.
you remember later on these little wise, sayings
Little
and
tidbits. Yeah,
absolutely,
absolutely. My
yes.
mother used to like to say, "Nothing ventured, nothing gained,"
Yes, there
and
it is.
it's another good one. It's probably a Greek translation for that, no doubt. John,
We'll add
before
it.
yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. John, before we leave you, let's end it with one last proverb.
Oh, how about I've been through many horrible things in my life, and most of them never happened. It's
That's
just
great.
it's just and I tell that one to my daughter all the time. I think it's got to be once a week, honestly.
Yeah.
And I just keep reminding her that we tend to worry about things, and we're human beings, so we tend to go to worst case scenario every single time, and it's just not what happens.
Absolutely. That's great. Yeah, because so many people worry about things, wait for it to actually happen before it
Mhm.
becomes a worry. Worry about failing that class or getting that job or losing that girl or whatever it might be once it actually happens. I think
Right.
that's great advice. Greek Proverbs and Sayings is the name of the book. It captures centuries of Greek culture, tradition, and insight, offering 212 thought-provoking proverbs in both Greek and English. If you're passionate about heritage or simply love a good piece of wisdom to live by, you won't want to miss this amazing book. Pamela, John, thank you both so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you both. Great having you on the show. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time. This time until next time on Spotlight.